Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing the second half of my May wrap up. As I said in the first video, I read 18 books in May, and so it just felt like the right thing to do to split my wrap up into two parts. So this is what I read in the second half of May. I've also got two books to show you. When I film this, it is the 25th of May, something like that. It's just after the bank holiday weekend. So I've got a few more days left in May, and there's two books that I'm currently reading that I'm pretty sure I'm going to finish. So I'm going to talk about those at the end, just so that they're included. But yeah, this is what I read in the second half of May. So the first half of the month, the first part of the second half of the month, we were still away, and so I was still reading quite a bit on my Kindle. So the first few books I've got to talk about were Kindle books. So first up was The Darkness by Ragnar Jonasson. Now, like I said in the first part of this wrap up, I read a few books this month that I probably would have DNF'd if I was reading physical copies, but for some reason reading them on Kindle made me push through and finish them. I'm not sure what that's about. It might have been because we were away and I had nothing else to do, but yeah, and this was definitely one of those. So this was recommended by one of the Bookstagram accounts that I follow. It looked really interesting. The premise was good. We're following a police inspector, I think she is, in Iceland, who's just about to retire, and she's told that she can choose any cold case she likes to kind of finish out her last few weeks, so that she can wrap up her career and then retire and move on with her life. And she picks the case of a young Russian immigrant who was found dead on a beach, and so she starts looking into it. I thought it was a really interesting premise, but I gave this book 1 star, and I would have DNF'd it if I was reading a physical copy. For me, the protagonist was really whiny. She kept complaining that she was having to retire and that she had no life of her own to go to, and it was just really repetitive. And she came across as this really kind of cranky old woman, and I just couldn't connect with her. And then the actual way that she was carrying out the investigation didn't make any sense at all. I couldn't follow it. She made some really stupid decisions, and the end was terrible. Really, really bad. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend this, and to be honest, I'm not interested in reading anything else from the author. So yeah, that was really disappointing. Then I read Jane Steele by Lyndsay Faye. Now, I saw Lauren from Lauren in the Books talking about this a while ago, and she's just done a video announcing that she's doing June Eyre, so she's reading like all books about and around Jane Eyre during June, which is such a fab idea. I read this in May, and we're basically following a character who is a fan of Jane Eyre, but talks about Jane Eyre as if it's a real diary that she's read of somebody real, and then our character is also killing men, or is it just men that she kills? Yeah, I think it is, as she sort of goes through her life. I had a really weird reading experience with it. It wasn't at all what I was expecting. I gave it 2 stars. I really liked the protagonist, but I just couldn't work out what I was reading. I wasn't sure if it was a retelling, or if it was like satire, or if it was just like straight up plagiarism. I really wasn't quite sure where it was, and that for me as a reader, I kind of need to know where I am before I can connect and get into the story. So yeah, I gave it 2 stars. It was funny in places, it was entertaining, I finished it, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and I was a bit disappointed. After that, I read My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing, which I gave 4 stars, and it'd been on my TBR one since I think I heard Books and Lala talking about it, and then I saw on Kindle, it was really cheap on Kindle, so I was like, great. I was running out of books that I'd already loaded for honeymoon and brought with me, and I thought, fab, I'm going to grab hold of that. So the setup for this is we've got a married couple. They've been together for years. They've got 2 kids that are like 10 and 13, I think. They seem to have a really happy marriage. They are wealthy. They live in a beautiful home. They've both got good jobs, and she's a serial killer and he finds victims for her. Again, really fascinating setup. The reason I didn't give it 5 stars was the end. It was really tense all the way through. It's a debut novel. I will definitely be looking out for more from Samantha Downing. But the end, for me, just didn't quite do it. So it was a 4-star read. I still really enjoyed it. I'd very much recommend it. It's obviously graphic in places, so be careful going in. But yeah, I thought it was a solid thriller and I very much enjoyed it. After that, I read Perfect Remains by Helen Fields. This is the first in a crime series. I don't really read like procedural crime very much, and this is from the perspective of a police inspector. And yeah, that's not usually my bag. I have to be honest, I picked it up because it was cheap on Kindle. But I've really enjoyed it and I've put the next book onto my TBR. We're basically following this new police inspector who moves to Scotland from France. So we're like learning his backstory as well. And then there's a killer on the loose who's taking girls and holding them in his home. So we get the police inspector's point of view and we also get the killer's point of view, and I just really liked how it was done. I liked how it played out, how things unravelled. I liked getting inside the serial killer's mind, and yeah, I thought it was really cool. I gave it 4 stars because it didn't quite hold the tension all the way through. I kind of saw how it was going to play out, and it did, but I did still really enjoy it, so I would recommend it. And then the last thing that I read on my Kindle this month was Suicide Club by Rachel Heng. Now, this has been on my TBR for ages, and I was really excited to get to it. I hadn't read it previously because it was really expensive to buy a physical copy. And then the paperback came out and that was still really expensive. So I waited, and then it came up on Kindle. I think it was like, might have been one of the 99p Kindle deals or something. So I grabbed that and thought, fab, I'm going to read this. It is dystopian fiction, and it's set in a world where humans, their life expectancy is now in the hundreds of years, which was very similar to the Neil Shusterman book that I read this month. But anyway, this was like an adult version of that. And people now are expected to live hundreds of years, and you are expected to want to live that long. And it was an interesting look at the morality of immortality. We follow a character who is very much part of the system until she sees her dad one day. Her dad comes back into her life and he has become part of what is called the Suicide Club, which are people who want to end their lives more naturally than the rest of society. And I gave it 3 stars. It was a debut novel, and I will look out for more from the author, but I just found it a little bit odd. I couldn't really connect to it. The story sort of meandered around. Again, the ending was a bit vague, and I really wanted to like it and I just didn't, so I gave it 3 out of 5, so that's fine. And then that is all the books on my Kindle. So the last 3 books that I've actually finished this month I've got here. So I read The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. This has been everywhere because it's been shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. This is the paperback, obviously, and it's beautiful, and it's got these really nice end pages. So this is a retelling of the Iliad from the female perspective. So we follow, and I really hope I'm getting this name right, Briseis, that's what I'm going with, who was a queen, a Greek queen. Then the Trojans come as part of the Trojan War, sack her city, kill everybody, and she is taken as a slave for Achilles. It's very, very violent, particularly at the start, but there is violence all the way through. There's also sexual violence all the way through. I gave this 4 stars. I had very high expectations for this, and they weren't quite met, and I don't know if that's my fault or not. But one of the things that I found frustrating was it's supposed to be a retelling from the female perspective, and we get Achilles' perspective. We get chapters from his point of view, and I just didn't want that. I wanted to stay with Briseis and the other women and see more of what they were living through and what was happening to them. It is about women during wartime, so obviously be aware of that, because it's very difficult to read in places. I really connected with her story, but I just didn't want the Achilles chapters, but that's just me. I did still enjoy this. I think for me, for the ones that I've read of the Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist so far, my favourite is still Circe by Madeline Miller. But yeah, this was also really good, and I can see why it's attracted so much attention. After that, I read The Farm by Joanne Ramos. I hope I've said that right. This was waiting for us when I got back from honeymoon, because it actually came out whilst we were away. I very rarely buy a hardback of a brand new book, but I was just really, really intrigued to read this, and a few of my friends had read it and said it was great, so I thought I'd give it a go. It's got a really interesting cover, which I really liked. So from this cover, you might think this is dystopian fiction, but it isn't. And actually I really liked that it wasn't, because for me that brought it closer to home. So it's basically set in and around a surrogacy farm, so where women go to be surrogates, and they're very cosseted, and they're very, like, they do yoga and they're given great food, and they're taken care of, but they also have no freedom, no privacy, and the only reason, like, everything is focused towards the baby that they are carrying. And we follow 4 women whose lives are basically affected by the farm in different ways. And I found this really interesting. Again, this is another debut novel. I've read a lot of debuts this month. This was a really good one. I will definitely look for more. I gave this 4 stars. It's a look at class. It's a look at racism. It's about what makes something exploitative versus, equal. It looks at women's rights to their bodies. It's particularly interesting to read given what's going on in the US at the moment, or parts of the US, in terms of the laws that are being passed there. And I was really hooked. I really liked it. I liked the different perspectives that we got. I liked the different shades of grey that we got in terms of morality. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think the only reason I didn't give it 5 stars is because I didn't emotionally connect with it as much as other ones I've read this month or read previously, but I would still very much recommend it. And then the final book that I finished this month was my classic, and that was Peter Pan by JM Barrie. And can we just admire this edition, because it's beautiful. Yeah, I've never read Peter Pan, which I realised when I stood in Waterstones one day. I've seen films, I've seen adaptations. I love Hook, great film. But I'd never actually read the original story, so I grabbed it. It's very short, it's like 210 pages long, something like that. And it's not what I was expecting. Boy, is it dark. Yeah, it's really dark, much darker than the Disney version. Peter Pan, the character, is not likeable, but I still really enjoyed it. It's still got this like whimsy to it. It's got very dark undertones, but there's still magic and whimsy, which I really enjoyed. And I had a good time reading it. So yeah, love that. I think I gave it 4 stars. 4 stars, not quite 5, but 4. And then I've got 2 books more that I'm going to talk to you about briefly, because, like I said, it's Tuesday when I'm filming this, so I've still got 3 days left of the month. I'm very likely to finish both of these books. The first one of those is The Boy Who Flew by Fleur Hitchcock. This is middle grade. It's historical middle grade fiction, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm about 52 pages in. We're following a boy called Athen, I think is how you say it. And so far he's been working with an inventor, and I think there's going to be a murder mystery involved. It's really fun. It's got some really lovely illustrations so far, and I'm predicting that it will be a 5-star read for me. And then the last one is a book I've been reading all month, but I have been reading it deliberately slowly, and that is Becoming by Michelle Obama. I'm actually listening to this on audiobook, and I'm about 3/4 of the way through, and oh my goodness, I'm going to be really sad when it's over. She narrates the audiobook, so I would highly recommend that, because she's literally just chatting to you and telling you her life story. It's absolutely fascinating. She's got such an insightful way of thinking, and it's wonderful. So yes, I will more than likely finish that, and it will definitely be a 5-star read. Something's going to have to go drastically wrong for it to not be a 5-star read at this point, because I am loving it. So those are all the books that I read in May. The last thing that I need to do now is, with my trusty cat mug, is to draw out my reread for June, because I'm putting together my TBR for the month. So let's see what I've got. So, oh brilliant. I've got This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. Fab. I think most people have read this at this point or heard of it, but it's basically a non-fiction book about his time as a junior doctor. I read it last year. Weirdly, I actually read it when we were on our mini-moon straight after our wedding. And I think I'm going to listen to it on audiobook because I've heard really good things about that. So, fab. So, that is everything I have to talk to you guys about today. Let's have a chat in the comments. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were. And I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye.